delighted to welcome Joel Gilbert back to the show. Joel, you've done another one of your amazing, groundbreaking investigations. I love having you on because you are so thorough and you rely on just such impeccable evidence in each of these things. And now you're investigating New York State Attorney General Leticia James. How are you today, Joel? Good to see you.
Okay, thanks. Good to be back. And I'm glad we can talk about Leticia James today. She's an interesting character, to say the least.
To say the least. And for people who perhaps have been living under a rock and haven't seen you before, people can follow you on X at Joel S. Gilbert. You are an acclaimed filmmaker, journalist, you're a political commentator, and you also run the website Highway 61 Entertainment.com. People can see your movies and purchase your books there. You did a great documentary about Trayvon Martin, another about Michelle Obama, your most recent, The Climate According to AI, Al Gore. And now you're digging into this mortgage, possible, alleged evidence that suggests the possibility that there may be mortgage fraud. What have you found?
Well, I started looking into Leticia James because I saw that Donald Trump was taking a hard look at all those people who persecuted conservatives around the country, the J6 people, and certainly persecuted himself. They were turning the United States into a third world country where political opponents are attacked with the legal system and they try to put their opponents in jail. I mean, it was unprecedented action by Merrick Garland and the Biden administration to go after Trump on all kinds of bogus charges. And one of the biggest ones was Leticia James' allegations against Trump in New York, claiming that when he took real estate loans for many years, that somehow, even though all his creditors were paid back and no one complained and they wanted to do business with him again, that somehow he inflated his assets. And that represented a crime that deserves, to be prosecuted in New York. So I thought it was worth looking at her because these Democrats are so hypocritical. Pretty much everyone knows that whatever they accuse Republicans of, they're probably doing themselves. So that got me decided, you know what, New York State is such an open record state. You can literally go online to the New York Department of Buildings, ACRIS in New York, and pull up anybody's name and actually get copies of all their history of real estate purchases, mortgages, deeds. And I just said, well, I think it's a good idea to look into her and look for any inconsistencies. Maybe the reason she knew about the idea to charge Trump with mortgage fraud is because maybe she'd been involved in it. Where did she get the idea from?
Right.
So that's what got me looking into it. And I thought I found two major revelations that had to do with her history in mortgages and with the homes that she'd purchased that I thought looked like, according to the definition of mortgage fraud, which is misrepresentation of your property or your marital status, that it certainly looked like she had committed mortgage fraud. So what I did is I wrote a couple of articles on the Gateway Pundit where I simply detailed my findings and presented the evidence which anybody could pop up and look at with all the appropriate links. So that's what I did. And the first one has to do with her purchase of a 4-story, 5-unit apartment building in Brooklyn at 296 Lafayette Avenue back in the year 2000. And she purchased it for $550,000.
Wow.
And there's something called a certificate of occupancy, and that is very important. Certificate of occupancy is the legal definition of your property, everything about it. And one of the things in the certificate of occupancy you can pull up says that it's a 5-unit building. There's 5 apartments. There's no question. It says there's 5 apartments. And I noticed that Leticia, when she, over the next 20 years, she refinanced that property several times. Each time she refinanced it, she claimed that it was only a 4-unit apartment building, 4 apartments. Now, that's simply not true. Leticia lives there in one of the apartments, and she rents out the other 4 to renters. And again, the certificate of occupancy is the legal definition. But whenever she applied for a refinancing loan, she claimed that it was only 4 apartments. Now, that designation seems like a minor one, but in fact, it's very important because anything up to 4 apartments is considered a residential loan subject to lower interest rates. Anything 5 apartments and over is typically a commercial loan, which is higher interest rates. So here she is refinancing 4 or 5 times over 20 years, and she always claims it's a 4-unit building, which it's not. Now, the most significant of her refinancing loans has to do with starting with a refinance she did in 2005. Now, in 2005, she refinanced her apartment with her apartment building with a private lender, and it was an adjustable rate that started at 7.2% and could go up as high as 10.2%. So she's got this adjustable rate. Now, come 2011, fast forward 6 years later, interest rates are up. She's probably paying around 10% by now on an adjustable loan. It adjusts every 6 months. So I found online a mortgage application where Letitia applies for a HAMP loan. HAMP was the federal government Home Affordable Modification Program, which was under TARP, the TARP program, out of
Saving
the federal
banks, troubled
out of the
asset.
federal. Well, it's out of the federal government, and the mortgage rate there was 2.7% only.
Ooh.
So she's looking for mortgage relief. And in this mortgage relief, she's trying to go from 10.2% to 2.7%, which would save her like $40,000 a year.
Wow.
The problem is the HAMP loan requirements, which I actually give you the link there in the article. They have a handbook called Making Home Affordable Program Handbook. And it clearly states that this loan is only available to people with 4 units or less. It's not available to someone with 5 units in their building. And the reason for that is they wanted to offer assistance to small homeowners, not to multifamily
Big landlords.
residential apartment businesses. Letitia had a multifamily residential apartment business in a 4-story building with 5 units. But she lied on her application and said it was only 4, so she would qualify. She also, you have to have a financial hardship. And in her application, she claimed that she could not afford to pay her loan. There was no way to afford it in the future. And she was suffering a financial hardship. Now, that is also a suspect claim because she was making $126,000 a year from her position on city council and as a professor at CUNY. So she's a single woman with no children. It's hard to believe that she could actually claim a hardship. So those are 2 big problems that appear to be fraud. And I feel, and I made the case that the U.S. Treasury Department, which oversees the HAMP loans, they have the ability to investigate her. And look, we know that Leticia James is a warrior for real estate fraud. She hates real estate fraud. And she made a victory speech when she got Trump convicted. She said, no one is above the law. Little people cannot lie to the banks to get favorable loans. So, the government has to prosecute. So I think it's a very serious case, and all the documents are there that Leticia James should be investigated for mortgage fraud from the federal government with her HAMP loan to get a benefit by lying about the number of units and lying about her financial condition. So that was the first article. I can, if you have any questions before we go on to the second one, that's the first scenario.
So were you the first person to really bring this forward, Joel? I know that Sam Antar has been sort of, investigating Leticia James as well, on posting his findings on X, but it seems like you've really come up with some hard evidence here. Has anybody else been discussing this yet?
Yeah, Sam does a great job. I've actually talked to him about this. He covers, there's a tremendous amount of information about Letitia's history, so he's kind of been covering a lot of it, especially as regards her campaign donations. There's a lot of stuff that he covers at whitecollarfraud.com is his website. I was able to look at this HAMP loan I have a real estate business myself, so it kind of it just stuck out to me. So I kind of focused on it because it's regulated by the federal government. You can imagine right now if somebody went to the New York State Attorney General's office and said, hey, there's 5 loans that Letitia took out over 20 years that appear questionable. She claimed there was 4 units instead of 5. Well, Leticia James is the Attorney General, so no one is going to look at it. They're going to tell you to, to get lost. So I thought the HAMP loan stood out because it was under the regulation of the U.S. Treasury Department to enforce it. So as a federal government-backed loan, they do have enforcement abilities, and that's why I focused on the HAMP loan, and I wrote this article that came out in the Gateway Pundit about it.
Really well done, Joel. I mean, again, as I said at the top of the show, I love your style, man. It's like, this is solid evidence. I've seen that ACRIS database before. I was pretty surprised, and I agree. It's a lot more information than many other states provide. It's, I don't want to say too much else about it.
Look, you can type in, Leticia James, and you'll get, 15 loans. You literally have to pull up every loan. Some of them are 26 pages long, download it and read it. And here's the key to research people don't understand. When you're doing research, you have to understand that you don't know what you're looking for. That's the thing that a lot of researchers don't realize. Some researchers say, well, I'm looking for X, Y, or Z, and they go look and they don't find it and they move on. I have an attitude which is, I don't know what I'm looking for.
Right.
So I read every document, and if anything stands out to me as inconsistent, then I investigate that. So that's how I found the HAMP loan. And I said, wait a minute, this loan has a limit of only 4 units, and her certificate of occupancy says she has 5. There's no way around it.
No.
If she wanted to do renovations or combine a couple of units, she would have to do it legally and would have to get a new certificate of occupancy. So she's definitely in violation with the HAMP and these other loans.
Fantastic work. Now, the other thing that you've discovered is it seems that she's married her father. Maybe she knows Ilhan Omar.
Right. So here, we know that Democrats do some weird things. Ilhan Omar married her brother and divorced her husband, married her brother so he could get an immigration benefit, and then divorced him and married her husband again. Hey. It's never been prosecuted, immigration fraud. Of course, Joe Biden took showers with his daughter that are pretty questionable, that apparently caused her all kind of major psychological issues in adulthood. And sure enough, I was looking at Leticia James' first property purchase on ACRIS on the website in New York. And in 1983, Leticia is 24 years old. She had graduated from Lehman College 2 years before. She hadn't yet started law school. She wouldn't start law school for another 1.5 years at Howard University in Washington, D.C. So this is in 1983. She's 24 years old, probably doesn't have a job, or if she does, is not making much money. She's living at home with her parents and 8 siblings. And I see a mortgage application from Leticia James to purchase a property in Queens. The property is on Prospect. It's 888 square feet. It's 2 stories, very small little 2-story townhome. It appears to be that this is a place where Leticia is going to live. She's getting her first home. But at 24, you wonder if she can really qualify for a mortgage loan with probably no job or low income. So sure enough, I'm reading the loan, and who are the borrowers? It's Robert James, which is her father, and Leticia James, husband and wife. That's right. She got qualified for this loan by pretending that she and her father were a married couple. Now, that would make sense to get a loan for a 24-year-old girl that doesn't have any, enough money to qualify for a home loan.
Cosigner, yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe they didn't do cosigning, but she definitely applied. It says right on the top, it says Robert James and Leticia James, husband and wife. And then on the signature page, right next to the signatures of Robert James and Leticia James, it says husband and wife. There's no 2 ways about it. Now, we know that Leticia James had never otherwise been married other than possibly to her father. I don't know if that explains something. But so this loan is transferred to another mortgage lender a couple months later. Again, they're listed as husband and wife. And when Letitia sells the property in 2000, same thing on the same document. It's the sales document. It says Robert and Leticia James, husband and wife. So I think there's a lot of evidence that's more mortgage fraud. You cannot misrepresent a relationship to qualify for a loan or get better terms on a loan. Now, on the deed itself, on the deed, it actually says Robert James and Leticia James, his daughter. So for the ownership, of the property, it was listed as daughter. But to get the loan to qualify, they continuously used husband and wife. So I thought that was another, very interesting abuse of the mortgage system in New York by Leticia James that she needs to answer for. That was also on Gateway Pundit. It got thousands of comments. And the comments are pretty typical for both of these articles. The people commenting say, ain't karma a bitch? And, hey, she needs to have her home raided by the FBI.
Yeah.
The same stuff that the Democrats did on these bogus charges to President Trump. They said, well, raid her house. You have to assume the worst. This is no clerical error. You must, prosecute. So I would like to see this investigated. And I think the only way to get the Democrats to stop abusing the legal system with lawfare is if Republicans do the same thing to them when they have the power to do so. But in this case, it's actually looks like real mortgage fraud, not something that's made up. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's the funny thing is that it's actually not using lawfare against perpetrators of lawfare. It's using justice against the perpetrators, or using the law to bring them to justice. I don't know. This kind of sticks out to me a little bit. Why $30,300 and not $30,000 or $31,000? Seems like a weird amount for the loan, doesn't it?
Well, no. I mean, you figure it might have been $30,000 loan, and maybe the fee. The fee for the registration fee might have been $300, so they added it in there. So the amount doesn't bother me. What bothers me, it's just very obvious. There's no way they could have signed that document, or told the person who made up the document and signed it and saw that it was husband and wife. And it makes all the sense in the world, because a 24-year-old girl out of college with probably no income living at home is not going to qualify to buy a home without sufficient income. So I think it's mortgage fraud. And the situation with her apartment building in Brooklyn, where she has 4 renters, she lives in 1 unit, certificate of occupancy, 5-unit building, 5 apartments. You cannot be applying for loans, government loans, that have a limit of 4 only. And you cannot, with a $126,000 salary, in the year 2011, you're making $10,000 a month. You cannot claim hardship that, I can't pay my loan, and I want the federal government and the taxpayer to subsidize my mortgage. Instead of paying 10.2%, I prefer to pay 2.7%. So I have a hardship. There's very strict laws that says you'll be prosecuted if you provide any false information for your government loan. So actually, Donald Trump today just tweeted this issue posted it on Truth Social, a link to Sam Antar's research, very similar to mine, about the certificate of occupancy issue. So I think the Treasury Department, Pam Bondi, need to look at this. If they don't, if the Democrats get back in power, they're just going to start prosecuting Republicans all over again.
Now, Joel, you had brought to my attention, I think the last time you and I spoke was like the day Pam Bondi was getting certified or about to or whatever, and you had raised the point that she had done some things that we agree were not very good when George Zimmerman had the issues there with Trayvon Martin. And how do you feel Pam Bondi has been performing so far as Attorney General? The whole Epstein files thing, all that.
Yeah. Well, the history of it, I made the film, The Trayvon Hoax, about the George Zimmerman case. I showed that the key witness, Rachel Jeantel, the hefty girl who said she was on the phone with Trayvon, she was his girlfriend, and she heard things over the phone that contradicted the eyewitnesses. that they used her testimony to arrest Zimmerman in the first place. I showed that that was a fake witness. The real girlfriend was named Diamond Eugene. It was a different girl, and I actually met the girl. She's in the movie, and she refused to lie to the police. So they found this fake witness, Ben Crump, the Martin family. They knew it was a fake, and they proceeded anyway. Now, Pam Bondi's role in it was that she was the Attorney General of the state of Florida, and the local police had investigated the shooting of Trayvon Martin. They looked at the eyewitnesses, 911 calls, all the evidence, and exonerated Zimmerman. They said, this is self-defense. There's nothing else we can do here. He was getting his head beat in. He begged for help. He had a broken nose. He was choking on his blood, and Trayvon was beating him up MMA style, wouldn't get off of him. And it was a pure self-defense case. That's when Ben Crump, Sharpton, Obama got involved and demanded that Zimmerman be arrested. Now, Pam Bondi, as the Attorney General, should have said, no, I've looked at the evidence. The police have investigated. It's self-defense. See you later. Instead, she caved into the mob and appointed her campaign manager, Angela Corey, as a special prosecutor to prosecute Zimmerman. The prosecution goes down and talks to Rachel Jeantel, who's now the fake witness, and she completely lies in her interview, and they proceed to prosecute Zimmerman. And of course, he was exonerated in the trial, and that's how Black Lives Matter was founded, because of Zimmerman's exoneration and being found not guilty. So Pam Bondi, her history is that she was responsible really for the foundation and formation of Black Lives Matter, because she didn't have a spine. She didn't look at the law in the case and just caved into the mob. So she's certainly somebody that, if Trump is appointing her as Attorney General, we have to have a lot of concerns. Does she have any principles? Does she have any backbone? So people have been looking at and scrutinizing her behavior so far. I think there have been some concerns. She said she was going to release the Epstein files. That didn't exactly happen. She shows up on Fox News quite a bit, looking good and a lot of makeup, and gives a good speech. But I think people are legitimately concerned if she's going to kick ass or not. RFK Jr. visited her at the Department of Justice, and he sent out a tweet, and he said he was standing in front of this giant picture of his father, RFK, on the wall. And RFK Jr., in his tweet, he says, he's standing there with Pam Bondi, and he says, this is the only picture that Sam Bondi has in her office, my father. I was so flattered. Well, that makes you got to wonder, is she a MAGA Republican or is she a Kennedy Democrat? She apparently worships RFK, you know. So there are serious questions about Pam Bondi, and I can continue to scrutinize what she does, and I would not be surprised if she doesn't make it to the end of this term, of Trump's term.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think she's been, oh, wait a minute. I didn't realize her shirt was kind of open in that picture. Yeah,
there it is.
I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you. It's very disconcerting.
She's a RFK Bobby Kennedy worshiper. Is she a Kennedy Democrat? Look how she behaved in Florida when the mob came for George Zimmerman. She said, "Yeah, I'll go after him." She didn't say, "Let's take a look at the evidence."
Right.
So we have a lot of going to keep our eyes on Pam Bondi.
Totally. And, you know, the thing is, Trump really came into this second term. Like, I don't think we've ever seen another president hit the ground running like Trump did. And I think it would have been a lot better in my mind if Pam Bondi had done something similar. You know, she knew she was up for this job. She could have had grand juries ready to go. She could be announcing indictments right now. Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Andrew McCabe. There's so many people that we know, Norm Eisen, that were involved in Russiagate and all this other stuff. Hopefully they're on their way to doing it, but I don't know. I'm very skeptical. And again, what you're bringing forward, this to me sounds like impanel a grand jury, show them this evidence, and trial starts next week.
Yeah, don't forget that the Democrats have a different way of doing things, as with the George Zimmerman case. They don't bother with a grand jury. They just indict people.
There was no grand jury?
Look, no. Don't forget, Pam Bondi was a second choice. Trump chose Matt Gaetz. He's the one that, you know, would have kicked ass on the agenda. Pam Bondi was a fallback choice because Gaetz ran into a lot of negativity and questions about, you know, his behavior in parties and the House and so on. So she was clearly a second choice. She did work for Stephen Miller's America First legal for a while. She did represent Trump in in some impeachment hearing. So all we can do is keep our eyes on her and see if she'll proceed, because Trump's biggest problem in his first term, he never took control of the Department of Justice. The Democrats and the media were screaming, the Department of Justice has to be independent. Don't touch it. Don't tell them what to do. Don't do anything. It's independent. It's independent. And Trump kind of caved in, and he never really took control of it. And they simply prosecuted Manafort and Stone and even Trump himself.
Yeah.
So Trump did not do a good job taking control of the Department of Justice. I think he intended to with Matt Gaetz, but now he's stuck with Pam Bondi for now. And I'm not seeing the type of action that we were hoping for, not yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, you mentioned Stephen Miller. I have to say, I've been extremely impressed with him. He would be a good candidate for Attorney General, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think he has experience. I believe he's an attorney, but I don't think he has experience
As a
prosecuting
prosecutor.
cases or running a DA's office or anything like that. He's also quite young,
True.
so I don't think he might not be considered qualified for that job yet.
You may be correct. I think he's only 39, but he's got an impressive career ahead of him. He's been a great spokesperson, and he seems to be quite smart, rare quality in an attorney's.
Yeah, no, he's a good guy. I've actually met his parents at an event in LA, and they're very proud of him. And he's from Santa Monica, and he started on the Hill. He was working in Jeff Sessions' office, and that's how Trump first got acquainted with him.
Wow. It's amazing. Well, I don't know if you've been following the Eric Adams case, but you see, I think that Leticia James plays a role there as well, because if the right thing to do is to prosecute this guy, why do we need to argue about that in federal court? Tish James could have just indicted Eric Adams if the Democrats are so dead set on prosecuting him. What do you think's going on there?
Well, I do encourage everyone to look up online and read the Eric Adams indictment, because it's very comprehensive. Trump publicly has only said, oh, Eric Adams got a couple of upgrades on an airline and a couple of upgrades at a hotel, and maybe he was just persecuted by the Democrats because he started to raise questions about their open border policy that was overwhelming New York City. Well, if you read it, there's a lot more to it. There's a whole thing about straw donors.
Right.
What happens in New York City is the city and the state government, they provide 8-to-1 matching funds for the money that a candidate raises. So if you raise $100,000, the city will give you $800,000. If you raise $1 million, they'll give you $8 million. Now, this amount of matching funds is incredible, and it's very tempting for politicians to find a way to raise some more money to get this incredible amount of matching funds. So as you read in the indictment on Eric Adams, what he did is he had some contacts with these Turkish businessmen, and he got the Turkish businessmen to give money to all their employees, $5,000 of the maximum. And then all their employees would donate to Eric Adams. And then in turn, Eric Adams would provide favors to the Turkish government as regards their consulate building in New York City, for example. Eric would go to Turkey on Turkish Airlines and fly business class for free, or for first class for a coach seat price. He'd go to some luxury resort hotels in Turkey, and they'd put him in these luxury $10,000 a night hotels for free, or for $50. So it was definitely grifting and using a foreign government to illegally create straw donors to then rip off the taxpayers with these 8-to-1 matching funds. It's a serious crime. But it looks like he's getting off because Trump has got some understanding with him that he'll cooperate on getting rid of these illegal immigrants. Now, what I did for Leticia James, what I'm still doing, and what Sam Antar was doing, I'm looking at her loans. She got all these refinancing loans, and I'm trying to compare them to the times where she was running for public advocate and running for attorney general. And I'm seeing that she took out these refinancing loans. Sometimes they were loans for renovations, and she actually didn't do any renovations. So I'm trying to understand, maybe I'm asking the question, did she take out these loans so that she could give this money to straw donors to
Yeah.
give back to her campaign so she could get 8-to-1 matching funds. So I'm still looking at that. That's I haven't solved it yet, but I'm definitely looking into it. And your viewers who are watching this, I encourage you to go to Acris in New York and go to the state election board and download everything I've downloaded and help us find the key to because you can download her whole list of donors, and there's some suspicious stuff going on. So that's what I'm looking into.
That's amazing. Yeah, the way that works is that the low dollar amount donors, they do 8-to-1. So they need to hand out the money and get people to make contributions of less than $250. And there's some much worse going on as well along the lines of that straw donor scheme. I had detected something going on at this Walcott Hotel. I don't know if you saw that guy standing there with the baby, but he's like a Tren de Aragua guy. And this is one of the hotels that was receiving money to process migrants in New York City. I had been thrown out of there by a civilian wearing a jacket that said the Neighborhood Association of Intercultural Affairs. And I looked that up. It's a nonprofit that received $79 million from the New York Department of Social Services, which was run by a hand-picked appointee of Eric Adams. So the $79 million goes to the Neighborhood Association of Intercultural Affairs to do whatever they want at this hotel. And then I think a lot of straw donors come out of that because the COO of the Neighborhood Association of Intercultural Affairs is a guy who's getting paid $656,000 a year, and he's a convicted felon who was convicted of charity fraud in 2010. I called him up to ask him about all of this, and he got very nervous on the phone, Joel. So I think there's a lot of screwy business going on with Eric Adams, and this straw donor, you're absolutely right, this 8-to-1 cash deal is just too tempting for these grifting, thieving politicians to pass up.
Yeah, I don't think Eric Adams invented it. I think that's why I said, well, if he was doing it, maybe they all do it. So I'm looking at Leticia James, and yes, you ran into that guy. Look, I think Elon Musk tweeted a couple weeks ago that he thinks the Democrat Party is one big kleptocracy.
Yeah.
U.S. aid, all these NGOs, the Inflation Reduction Act, it's all just shelling out billions to these causes, to these NGOs. Stacey Abrams got $2 billion, for who knows what. It's just, it's this free money party that they've been engaging in. If you and I were smart, we would start something called New York Assistance to Transgender Immigrant Rights. And we would ask the federal government or USAID for $50 million, we'd probably get it. And we wouldn't have to do these podcasts, right?
Well, if you and I did it, they'd put us in jail almost.
Well, no, they don't. I don't think they check. I don't think they really check.
You're right. And the thing is, Joel, we're joking about it.
It's a huge money laundering scam.
Right.
I don't know how, for instance, how in the world did Kamala Harris ran for president on about 3 months' notice? Usually you have to raise money for a year and a half to run for president, and you're lucky to raise a couple $100 million if you're really good. She runs for president on short notice and raises like $2 billion. Now, if one day we find out that money came from USAID or from Ukraine, I wouldn't be surprised.
The thing is, we were joking about it there for a second, but you're right. It's not only a money laundering scheme. It's essentially an underground economy where all of these people steal our tax money, and then they have all these 501c3s where they pay all of these people six-figure salaries to essentially do nothing. But a lot of them exist only to basically be like, defending democracy and this and that. And they hire a bunch of lawyers to just sue people like you and me, or to file amicus briefs in the Eric Adams case, which I don't know if too many people realize this, but Norm Eisen, the guy who is, basically the king of the Russiagate hoaxers, he is one of the amici curiae, look right here, board member of this State Democracy Defenders Fund. Norm Eisen is butting into this Eric Adams case because this is a lawfare vector pointed right at Donald Trump. This is not a real case. And I don't think Donald Trump understands the danger to himself here, because I believe they intend to use this as a political albatross to hang around Donald Trump's neck, make the biggest mess possible, make it look to everyone like it is some kind of corrupt arrangement, and then only when it's too late, Trump will be like, wait a minute. So this is a problem, I think.
Yeah, look, the whole legal system is becoming a problem for the Trump agenda. You've got, I think it's 833 federal judges. 260 were just appointed by the Democrats in the last year of Biden. There's no question that they're all, or a large portion, or even if it's a small portion, are going to be willing to issue injunctions to everything that comes before them that Trump tries to do to execute executive power. U.S. aid, deporting illegals, you name it. You're going to have some federal judge somewhere say that Trump has to stop or turn the planes around. Now, I don't know exactly how long, but it's going to have to work its way through the circuit courts and through all these other courts to get to the Supreme Court to get a ruling on everything, where hopefully some of the wishy-washy conservative judges like Roberts will hopefully rule on the side of a separation of powers. But this is definitely the play that they're doing at every level now, is through these courts and federal judges, many of whom are Biden appointees.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think to some extent they don't even care if they succeed. It's just about gumming up the works, slowing down Trump, and just doing whatever they can. The other thing that judges want to do is now Boasberg has all these hearings that he's calling for. He's trying to trap these lawyers who are doing Trump's bidding in contempt and, different kind of sanctions he can put on them. They love to do that as well. But Joel, I am sensitive to your time. I know it's Friday, and thank you for joining me. I want to make sure that people visit Highway 61 Entertainment. So it's highway61ent.com. You can buy Joel's films. You can watch them. You can purchase the books. Anything else you want everybody to know about Joel?
Yeah, well, just be sure to hit the latest movie. It's called The Climate According to AI Al Gore. I blow the lid off the climate emergency hoax by looking into the origins of where it came from Al Gore's introduction of the climate hoax. He introduced it back in 1992 with his book, Earth in the Balance. That's where he first introduced it. He followed it up later with his other film, called An Inconvenient Truth. So what I did is I investigated Gore, and I could do that because I actually worked for him. I was a student intern for Al Gore when he was a conservative U.S. senator from Tennessee when I was a student. So I got to know him a little bit, and I looked into Gore's original claim. In 1992, he said, look, I know I'm not a scientist, but I got all this climate info from my Harvard professor. I took a class in 1969 for 3 months, so everything I'm saying about the climate emergency is true. And no one ever looked into it. So I was the first one that did. I went down to the University of San Diego, where his Harvard professor, Roger Revelle, where his papers were stored. And I found out, number one, the class that Gore took had nothing to do with the climate. It was a class about human population growth, which was the big concern at the time. And I looked at all of his professor's writings for 25 years, 30 years. It turns out his professor completely disagreed with everything Gore said. So the next thing I did is say, well, where did Gore get this from? And I looked at Gore went to divinity school in 1992. I'm sorry, in 1971, he went to divinity school to get out of the Vietnam War. And that's where I found this book that he read, part of the curriculum, called Our Plundered Planet. It's called Our Plundered Planet. It was a wacky book from the 1940s where they're saying that humanity is destroying the world, we're all going to die. And I looked at Gore's book, and I realized that Gore had plagiarized it. And what happened is Gore could not, in 1992, say, hey, I got all my information from my wacky professors at divinity school. So he tried to legitimize it by saying, oh, I got it out of Harvard. So I think this blows the lid off the entire story of Al Gore, that there's too much CO2.
Right.
That carbon dioxide is bad. Turns out carbon dioxide is only 1/3 of 1% of all the gas in the atmosphere. You could double or triple it. It would have no effect. It doesn't control temperature. Carbon dioxide is plant food. The more you create, the taller the trees get, the more greener the deserts. So the whole idea was made up by Al Gore, and I think this film is just a mind-blowing film. I'm going to be testifying in Congress at some of the upcoming energy hearings about my findings, that the entire climate climate emergency was made up by Al Gore, and it's a complete fraud.
Wow, that's exciting. I didn't realize you were going to be testifying before Congress. That's wonderful.
Yeah, so go to climatealgore.com, climatealgore.com. You can watch the movie trailer and link up to live stream the movie and get the DVD.
Huh. Yeah, people should definitely check that out. But the other thing is, isn't it true that Al Gore and some other guy created the some kind of stock exchange or something, that they made a lot of money from scaring people into thinking carbon dioxide was doing something that it isn't?
Yeah, well, Gore in the early 2000s, after he lost to George Bush, he set out to become what we call the world's first carbon billionaire. Right. He set up all these business exchanges and government loans and things to make money off of this theory that there's too much carbon dioxide. But every single prediction Gore made about the flooding of the coastal cities, the melting of the ice caps, it's all a bust. The world's gotten colder. That's why they changed the terminology. For the first 15 years, they called it global warming, but it kept getting colder. So about 2008, they said, oh, well, let's just call it climate change, so that any weather event, if there's a hurricane in November, if it gets hot in Las Vegas in July, we'll say that's climate change. And that's how they've gotten away with it.
Unbelievable. It's a rebranding of just weather and charge people for it. It's crazy.
Right.
Well, Joel, thanks again.
Yeah. It's the same old scam to get people to vote for and do things to create central planning and wealth redistribution that they would never tolerate, based on the idea that we have to save the planet. That's what it's really all about.
Yeah. They're out of their minds, burning up Teslas now and everything like that, yelling at people to sell the Tesla. You know that they're idiots, because they're stopping people on the street and yelling, sell the Tesla, but yet the moment they sell it to somebody else, they'll go stop that person and yell at them. So it's not really a good solution, but...
Look, it's all about hypocrisy. We started this conversation with Leticia James. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. She prosecutes Trump for mortgage fraud, but she herself, according to the evidence that I found, engaged in mortgage fraud her entire life. It's all hypocrisy.
Yeah, they're really not very creative at all. But people should check out the article on the Gateway Pundit. It's fantastic research, and it's good that Trump is dialed in. Hopefully we will see some action on this, Joel, because that's really where the rubber meets the road, right? It's exciting to discover these things and help everybody learn about what's going on. But man, I really hope that we see something happen, because we're running out of time, really, I think.
Well, hopefully Trump's just getting started, so let's stay tuned.
Absolutely. Joel, thank you for coming on the show. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And don't forget, you can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great week.